As I drove out of Las Vegas, I seen a motel and a road leading up to the motel. And there's a lot of bushes and brushes beside the road before you got to that motel. That's where I pulled up her body out and rolled it down there. And I heard a secondary roll of noise. That meant she was still rolling.
In 2019, the FBI confirmed that Samuel Little is the most prolific serial killer in US history. Little confessed to killing 93 victims across several states between 1970 and 2005. Before his death in 2020, age 80 years old, Little left behind a disturbing puzzle for detectives. He confessed to almost 100 murders, and the FBI stated all his confessions are credible. If you combine the total number of victims who died at the hands of notorious serial killers Ted Bundy, Wayne Gacy, and Jeffrey Dahmer, you still would not be close to Little's kill count. Yet despite these shocking figures, he's still relatively unknown to the public. My name is Merryweather, and I'm the founder of Crime Viral Online. Today I'll be doing what I do best, which is talking about serial killers. Our video today is Samuel Little, 5 disturbing facts about the most prolific serial killer. But first, here is a treat for all you true crime fans. Magellan TV is a new type of documentary streaming membership founded by filmmakers. Their team of producers and curators brings together premium content that dives deep into important documentary subjects. Magellan TV is some of the best collections available in true crime, history, science, nature, and space. There are so many great choices, it's hard to stop watching once you start. There are over 3,000 documentaries to choose from, and programs are added on a weekly basis. Even better, there's a growing selection of shows available in 4K without additional cost. You can watch Magellan TV on any device or connected TV. You can even cast from your phone to your TV. It's super easy to use. So check it out now, click the link below to get a full month free. I have just finished watching the heartbreaking documentary Finding Lee, A Tangled Web. In South Johannesburg, a young woman's body is found in a field, and later she is identified as 21-year-old Lee Matthews. Lee was abducted from her college, and her kidnappers demanded her father pay a ransom. This retelling of these tragic events documents the final hours of a girl whose life ended far too soon. Kidnapping in South Africa is a common crime in the country, and this hard-hitting documentary shines a light on how this serious crime can be prevented in the future. Now let's get you back to the serial killers. 5. He selected victims he thought nobody would care about. Samuel Little selected female sex workers and drug addicts who were vulnerable as his intended victims because he believed these deaths would go unnoticed. Little was able to avoid detection for almost 4 decades. He believed he would not be caught because nobody was accounting for these victims. He said, "I never killed senators or governors or fancy journalists, nothing like that. It would be all over the news the next day. I stayed in the ghettos. Little killed and then skipped town." Little had a long criminal history in early adulthood. He was previously arrested for driving under the influence, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and rape. During his time in prison for these crimes, he learned how to become a professional boxer. The serial killer used his psychopathic superficial charm to lure his victims into a false sense of security. He would go on a date with women he had selected, take them out to dinner first, and then he drove them to secluded alleyways or to secluded side roads. This location was his intended kill site. He used his boxing skills to knock his victims out cold with one punch or place them in a chokehold before strangling them to death. Then he dumped the bodies. Many of the victims' deaths were originally reported as overdoses or death by accidental or undetermined causes. Some bodies were never found. 4. He was sentenced following disturbing testimonies from survivors. In 2012, Little was arrested on a drug charge in Kentucky and extradited to California, where officers carried out DNA testing. The DNA results linked him to 3 unsolved murders from 1987 and 1989 in Los Angeles County. He pleaded not guilty, but he was convicted and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole. Former sex worker Lelia Johnson gave a testimony in court, recalling how she was attacked by Little in November 1981. She said he got his big hands around my neck, but I was a fighter and I was scratching him in the eyeballs, fighting and kicking, fighting for my life. He was evil. You could tell he hated women and he liked having control. She managed to escape, but she failed to report the attack at the time, assuming nobody would believe her. 3. He draws his victims from memory to help solve cold cases. Over the past 5 years, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program have been working on cold cases they believe are linked to Little. Little's photographic memory that allows him to recall the faces of victims even decades later has been able to assist in many of the cold cases connected to him. He is also able to remember with great accuracy where the exact location of each murder was and what car he was driving at the time. Little has sketched many portraits of his victims, and this has proved successful in identifying 2 women. The serial killer said, "The only things I was ever good at was drawing and fighting." The FBI then shared these portraits in an effort to identify more victims. They also published video interviews where he describes details of the murders.
7'5'6". She weighed about 135.
Okay.
Maybe 140.
And how old do you think she was?
But she was 19.
Okay. And where was she from?
No, Miami, down in Liberty City.
Okay. And did she, you'd mentioned before she had a boyfriend, or she talked about a boyfriend?
Named Wes.
Wes?
Yeah.
And tell me about where you met her at.
I seen her down at the Guar on 17th Avenue, and she had on a short cream miniskirt. Cream and red.
2. He confessed to a Texas Ranger. Little kept up his not guilty plea even after following his sentencing. Then finally Texas Ranger James Holland eventually managed to persuade Little to drop the act and confess to his brutal killings. Holland was able to question Little for more than 700 hours at the California prison. Whilst the 2 ate pizza together, as the serial killer described the murders in detail. Little confessed to the Ranger every murder he could remember. Holland said he was so good at what he did. He did the crime and left town. The first thing I picked up on was how smart he was. Nothing he's ever said has been proven to be wrong or false. He's been able to prove almost everything he said. Number 1. He said killing felt like heaven. It's not unusual for a serial killer to show no signs of remorse. However, Little actually referred to himself as an angel of mercy, as he believed God put me here to do this. During a series of disturbing interviews, he referred to his victims as my babies, and that killing felt like heaven. It felt like being in bed with Marilyn Monroe. Little was 80 years old when he passed away at California Hospital on December the 30th, 2020. Although there was no specific cause of death, Little suffered from diabetes, heart problems, and other health conditions. He now leaves behind a macabre puzzle for the FBI agents to piece together. Is Samuel Little one of the most disturbing serial killers of all time? We would love to hear your opinions, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for even more serial killer content.